Hello, everyone. Thank you for having me here today, even virtually. I am Kendall Nelson. I'm a senior upstream developer advocate at the Open Infrastructure Foundation, and I am here to talk to you today about the Loki stack. So, how many of you know what the Loki stack is? Well, if you don't know, you will by the end of this talk. So, a little bit about myself before I dive into today's presentation. My name is Kendall Nelson. You know that already. I have been an open source contributor since 2015, specifically to OpenStack since 2015. And then in 2019, I also got involved with the Kubernetes project. So I've been around for a little while now. I have done talks at a lot of different venues. I've been able to speak at open source summits, the open infrastructure summits, both as presentations and keynotes. I've been able to talk at PyCons around the world and also KubeCon a few times as well. And when I'm not doing talks at these places and teaching people about the wonderful world of open source, I enjoy watching Doctor Who, watching or reading the Harry Potter books, traveling when I can get there, and running as well. I just got done with a race recently, and it was a really long one, but it was fun. So, Loki, Linux, OpenStack, and Kubernetes together building your infrastructure. Let's sit with that for a moment. Loki. So, Linux. We're all familiar with Linux, hopefully, but basically, a quick overview. Linux provides the layer where hardware and software meet. It's probably the most ubiquitous tool in our industry, having been around since 1991. It's one of the original open source communities and is still one of the largest open source communities in the world. Linux is also written in C and assembly, if you were curious. But effectively, Linux is the open source operating system standard. And that's why it's ubiquitous. We see it everywhere. It's used and integrated into every open source project and tool out there. So, Linux got the L. OpenStack. Hopefully you've heard of OpenStack as well by this point. But OpenStack, if you don't know, is an open source cloud operating system that's written in Python. And it was started in 2010 as a joint project between Rackspace and NASA. The originally OpenStack Foundation, now the Open Infrastructure Foundation, formed a couple years after the project did, actually, to help support and grow and foster the community that was springing up around this project. If you're interested in finding out more about the OpenStack project, you can go to openstack.org. We are currently on the Antelope release. Bobcat will be coming out this October. We have a release cadence of every 6 months, so there are new things always on the horizon. Effectively, OpenStack now has become the open source cloud standard. So we have I'll go back a slide. We have the open source operating system standard and now the open source cloud standard. So we have two parts of this whole stack that we're putting together for our infrastructure. So you have Linux as the base and then OpenStack running on top of that. And then we have Kubernetes, which you may have heard of as well. So Kubernetes is the open source system for automating deployment, scaling, and management of containerized applications. It is written in Go, and their most current release is 1.28. They release every 3 months, which is that's a very fast cadence. It's hard to keep up. Kubernetes started in 2014 and was given to the Cloud Native Computing Foundation by Google. It's now a graduated project, and if you're interested in finding out more about Kubernetes, you can go to kubernetes.io. So we have the de facto standard for cloud, we have the de facto standard for operating systems, and Kubernetes definitely has made a name for itself and become the de facto standard for open source container orchestration. So now we have our three technologies, our L, our O, our K, and the I is infrastructure, which is what all of it provides together. Infrastructure for your workloads, your use cases, for your customers' needs, meeting all of them. So the thing that is most interesting, I think, is how many different ways you can put OpenStack and Kubernetes together on top of Linux to get the infrastructure that you need. And it might not really sound like that. I know for a long time people pitted OpenStack and Kubernetes against each other, like one was going to replace the other, that they couldn't be used together, that they were oil and water, but they really aren't. They fit together in so many ways. And to continue the food-related metaphors, I would say they're like peanut butter and jelly, or I don't know, other excellent foods that fit together. Bread and butter, how about that? That's another good one. But they can be leveraged on separate layers of the stack to greater increase the agility, security, and flexibility of the whole stack. There are benefits that you get from OpenStack and benefits you get from Kubernetes, and I am here to tell you how to put them together, or a lot of the different ways that you can put them together. So what we have here with Loki is end-to-end open source infrastructure. Every project is open source for the whole stack, which is a huge argument for your businesses and for all of the communities that will be there to support you when you use these things together. It's definitely what we see at the Open Infrastructure Foundation as being the standard these days. So how do they fit together? I said that we could put them together a bunch of different ways, but how does that actually work? Well, I'm going to focus on the integration of OpenStack and Kubernetes specifically, and I think we're all reasonably familiar with how Linux fits into the mix. So I won't go into those details as much as the ways that OpenStack and Kubernetes integrate. So first off, we have OpenStack inside a Kubernetes container. How does that work? What tools do we use? Why? So OpenStack Helm actually allows you to containerize the OpenStack control plane to ease deployment and management. And it's not only able to deploy OpenStack in a Kubernetes container, but it also can help with maintenance and upgrading of loosely coupled OpenStack services and their dependencies individually or as part of a set of complex environments. So if you have a customer that wants access to a virtual machine and you have this huge fleet of pods, you can throw OpenStack into one of them. They can do what they need to do, and then you can tear it down and you'll be able to roll it back out again whenever you need for a new customer or spin up a new one, because the features and capabilities that you get with OpenStack have a lot. It provides a different set of functionalities and capabilities than what you can accomplish within a pod. And sometimes you need that extra stuff, so you can run OpenStack in your Kubernetes container. The next one is Kubernetes containers on top of OpenStack. So Kubernetes is designed to run within a cloud. We all know this. It's got to run somewhere. A lot of people don't take a whole lot of time to think about where they're going to run it. They just, hand over their credit card to some hyperscaler and call it a day. But Kubernetes is engineered to expect that the cloud is running in to provide multi-tenant isolation, because it needs that isolation between its Kubernetes clusters for security reasons and for functionality reasons. And OpenStack can supply this. So there are a number of solutions for installing Kubernetes on top of OpenStack, but one of the easiest ways that more recently has been growing again is using OpenStack Magnum with the Kubernetes Cluster API or CAPI project. So Magnum, which I haven't mentioned yet, is an OpenStack project that provides a simple API to deploy fully managed clusters backed up by a choice of several application platforms, including Kubernetes. So this is an example of how Kubernetes deployment system relies on the OpenStack APIs and the cloud provider plugin. So today, or recently in a user survey, we learned that CERN uses Magnum to manage their enormous independent and federated Kubernetes installation. That is an on-site cloud and also makes use of partner clouds. So that's a hybrid cloud, if you will. And then lastly, the third way that Kubernetes and OpenStack integrate together for these different Loki stacks. In the Kubernetes community, there is cloud provider OpenStack, and there are many plugins for that, which allow OpenStack services like Cinder and Manila to be run standalone, which means that they don't need Nova, the compute service within OpenStack, to be able to provide storage solutions to containers, as an example. But there are a number of other plugins to the OpenStack provider as well. There is Magnum for auto healing, Octavia for ingress load balancing, and Barbican and Keystone for secret and authentication management. So if you're interested in finding more about how the cloud provider works, you can go to Kubernetes/cloud-provider-OpenStack to find out more. But so I've given you a lot of examples. We have 3 different ways that these technologies fit together, but like data, we like data to back these things up, right? So Kubernetes is now deployed on over 85% of OpenStack deployments. 85%. And 73% through vanilla Kubernetes itself. The rise in OpenStack and Kubernetes production integrations, such as the 3 that I've gone through, is further documented by a 21% increase, up from just 16% the previous year, of users running production workloads with Magnum, the OpenStack service for container orchestration, like I had mentioned before. So hopefully that helps paint a picture of how many people are using the Loki stack and why it might be a good idea for you to get involved and try it out. So if you're interested, I would say the best couple places to get started that are growing and are ready for help and interested in your opinions and feedback. First off, the cluster API that I had mentioned, there are a couple links there for the documentation and for the actual repository, and they would really love more OpenStack perspective and input. Right now, the team is very Kubernetes focused, and so they don't know as much about how OpenStack is used traditionally. So if you're interested in running OpenStack on top of Kubernetes, this would be a really great place for you to get involved. And building off of that, OpenStack Magnum also could use some more help, as always. Most open source communities could always use more help. Specifically with OpenStack Magnum, though, we're trying to automate the conformance testing for maintaining Kubernetes certifications as a Kubernetes or a provider for Kubernetes, I believe it is how it's phrased. And other work that's currently being done that we would love feedback and input and help with is that we have 2 different drivers that were developed by Stack HPC and another by VexHost for integrating with the cluster API within Magnum. So any feedback on those or things that you would like to see feature-wise, we would love your input. Please come and get involved. And then lastly, you don't have to just listen to me. There are plenty of articles out there and discussions about other ways the technologies are being leveraged together by companies like Red Hat and Canonical and many, many others. So you can take a look for yourselves. Some of the links I'll provide here and make sure are accessible from my slides when I share them are a couple super user blog posts about the benefits of Loki, a couple Open Infra Live episodes that we have had about companies' futures being more sustainable with the use of Loki to support them, and how Loki is the open infra standard. And then also a couple demos, because it's always good to see how these things work in action. So there was a demo at the Berlin Summit and another at the Vancouver Open Infra Summit that was just earlier this year. So please go check those out. And if you have any other questions after that, please feel free to contact me. My email address is there, knelson@openinfra.dev. You can reach out to me on Twitter. I am at knelson92. Or if you are on Mastodon, I am at diablorojo@fosstodon.org. I look forward to hearing from you how you use all of these awesome tools together, and I hope that you are ready to dive in and start using it in production like a lot of other companies. There's definitely a way of integrating these things together to fulfill what you need and to do it well, built on a stack of open source projects and communities there to back you up every step of the way. Thank you.